Hi, Ramy. How's it going?
Hi.
Hi. If you have tea with you, not necessary, but feel free to, oh, oh,
Oh,
perfect. Okay, I'm gonna disappear now. And Sana, you can take it away.
thank you. Cool. This all felt very Indian matchmaking, especially with like the tea too. It's like, okay, the whole family's here. We're all gonna get set up and go take it away. So congrats on the nomination and completing 2 seasons, and you're renewed for a third, right?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
So it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's like, who would have thought? You're like, you're Ramy Youssef. You grew up in Jersey, right? And I'm just wondering, like, at what point in your mind did it click that, like, hey, Ramy Youssef, this guy wants to turn into Ramy, what it is today, the show, and, kind of what it's become? Was there like a moment?
No, it's so gradual. It just kind of creeps up on you in a way. Like, obviously I was always putting in the work. Like I started, playing around with cameras when I was, I think in like the third or fourth grade. And I was always kind of making things. And then it kind of grew in high school into like editing things, writing things. But I didn't really have any sort of reference point for the idea that I could do something on the scale of what I was doing. Not just because I hadn't really seen any Arabs or Muslims prominently in anything, but it was also just, I was from New Jersey, like you said, like it's not like a showbiz town. Like I didn't know anyone who was really in that position. So it always kind of felt like it was going to be a hobby. And then it kind of, I just never wanted to stop. And I kept being like, all right, let me just do one more sketch show before I have to like start real life, or let me just make one more video, or maybe I'll just try stand up until I have to go to law school. But then really quickly, it kind of just, that gap between like when will real life have to start kind of just got wider and wider.
So, I mean, totally relate that like there's just not, that much in terms of representation. Like there's for Muslims and just in general, immigrants and people of color, there's just not as much like who do we look up to and who are the people
Yeah.
that for? So who are the people that you kind of looked up to in comedy and just in terms of mentors?
Um, I mean, I think like for me, there were just like I liked comedy that was funny and also saying something. I mean, like my uncle kind of introduced me to George Carlin like really early on, and so it was just like this like really cool peek at what were essentially like rants, that were like very very similar to the ones that my uncles would make too. So it was like an interesting thing to kind of have in your ear early on. And then obviously like between the sketch show and the stand-up, just Chappelle was someone that, yeah, you kind of grow up and you're like, wow, this person is doing something and really talking about something, but also still has a lightness. It's like there's like a wisdom, but then there's also just this lightness and this like so that was really yeah, having some of those voices in my ear were really cool. But then also just in comedy, honestly, like just people around me, like my family is so funny. My uncles and my mom in a room is the funniest kind of combo of people that you could have. And so when I look back, I realize, oh yeah, like my mom is probably one of the most sarcastically funny people that I've ever met, and undeniably an influence.
That's great. And like I think that comes out in the characters too, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
dark, bleak humor, which is really great.
yeah.
In terms of like, I mean, I know you've talked about it in the past, but just getting your like grandparents or just your family to see the show, which has some risque moments. Like how has that been for you, and how have you kind of brought them on board with it? What's their reaction?
I mean, yeah, look, culturally, we love talking about politics and we don't want to talk about sex. And my show, we don't really talk about politics, and we really talk about sex. So it is the flip, and that was what I intended. It was what I wanted. I knew, yeah, I could make a show where we just kind of sit in a circle and complain about Trump, or complain about policy in the Middle East and the effects of colonialism. All real, all very real. And I don't say complain lightly. I say these things are so defining of our experience, and they dominate the headlines and they dominate our dinner tables. But because they do, there are these other aspects of our humanity that we're not tapping into. And so I feel like it's kind of on the art, it's on the artists to present the things that are hard to talk about at dinner, to present the things that are not easily said, but if a reference point was created, we could have some of these conversations. And so by nature of that desire, it's kind of hard to kind of course, like at first show some of this stuff to my parents. I mean, grandparents is a whole other story. I mean, like my grandmother, Allah yarhamha, she just passed away this year, but when she was in the hospital, she would kind of ask me about the show, and I would be like, oh yeah, you know, like you guys don't have Hulu, so you can't watch it, you know. But you know, she was passing away, and I edited her like a couple of episodes where we like took out all the sex scenes, and we took out all the things that would make her uncomfortable. So it was just like people praying and eating dinner, and she loved it, you know. So she was very happy.
Yeah, that's great, for sure. And I'm just wondering, like, how you kind of, you know, what advice you give to folks who are like aspiring to be Ramy Jr. or like, I don't know, Ramina Jr., like the female version of that or the non-binary version of that. What are some points of advice that you would bring out?
Well, I would just say, like, you really have to make the thing that you want to see, and to really create from a place. It's a really difficult balance because shows are made to be watched by audiences. So I think it's silly to say, don't care what the audience thinks. I think you're aware of what the audience is going to think, and you know, but pleasing the audience can't be the goal. The goal needs to be to like connect with them. And I think there's a real big difference, because kind of trying to make something where you're like, all right, no one's going to be pissed by what I'm making here. Like Twitter won't be upset, and this person won't be upset, and this person, like, make something that's like foolproof to that. Like that, I think is really, that's really dangerous. Like, I think that's the kind of thing that makes it really hard to make something good and make something that you actually want to see. So I would just urge people to really kind of block out all that noise and just know that it's going to be okay. And know that if you make something honest, it's going to reach the people that it's supposed to reach.
Totally.
Because
Awesome.
you're a filmmaker as well.
I am a filmmaker. I've made primarily documentaries, but I'm now venturing into scripted, which is a scary and big world. I just finished my first scripted film.
Oh, wow.
So it's exciting and I love it, but it lets you explore so many themes and ideas. But yeah, it comes with a lot, you know, in terms of like, just you're putting your art out there and how's it going to be received.
Doesn't writing suck?
Does what suck?
Writing.
Oh my God. Yeah. What's your secret? What are your tips to like, how do you get out a whole season worth of shows?
It's not efficient. I'll tell you that. I don't have like an efficient writing process. I'm I'm trying to figure out how to write something without going just like completely insane. It's really difficult to, especially when you're writing about stuff that scares you, or you're writing stuff where you're like, oh man, like, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. And just the act of, you know, it's hard to get that out and to really have that discipline. And you know, we've made 20 episodes, and I feel like I'm just getting the hang of the process. Like, I know what I love, and I know what I can get down, but it's really, it's a beast for sure.
I've not ventured on anything of that magnitude or size, but just in terms of even just like writing a couple of pages, I'm like, oh my God, like how do you, thinking about how people talk, like that's the hardest
Right.
part. Like how do you get into someone's head? Like how did you figure out, you know, how your dad talks on the show? And I mean, there's reference, but still, that's the hardest
Well, it's
part.
not based on my parents, but like a lot of it is kind of, you are like a crazy person, you know, like I'm walking around the kitchen and I'm like, you know, I'm like, it's like, it's
Yeah,
crazy. But it's fun. It's really fun. It's so fun when you kind of like can watch back and edit and you're like,
totally.
man, I can't believe that came together. It's really cool.
And that shows because you guys do so many different things really well. So congrats again. And it was really cool to talk to you and get to know a little bit more about the show.
Oh, thanks, Sana. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want to see you submitted a short?
Yeah, so it was I mean, I won the Bafta for the doc category last year. It's on the New Yorker.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it just got published last week. But
Amazing. I'll definitely watch it. Yeah.